The raid of Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago, how did it go down? Christina Bobb is going to tell us in under 60 seconds.
After weeks of negotiation with the Department of Justice, very cordial, very cooperative, out of the blue, they raided Mar-a-Lago. Defiant comes with the receipts. I've got text messages, emails, I've got the dialogue, I've got the records to show you exactly what happened, when it happened, and how everything played out. This will give you the truth about the raid on Mar-a-Lago, all of the Jack Smith investigations. I also cover the January 6th investigations, as well as the investigations into Trump allies in other states. It's shocking. You will not believe what you read.
All right, guys, happy Monday. I hope you had a good weekend. I accomplished nothing. I had this huge, long list of things that I wanted to get done, and none of it happened. None of it. Which, you know what? Sometimes it was very relaxing, put it that way. But anyway, the list continues to go on. Anyway, Elon Musk, his last day in the government was Friday. What an epic press conference. that was so good. So good. But I want to take you down memory lane. Do you remember when Elon Musk, in the lead up to the inauguration at Capital One Arena, did the following?
I just want to say thank you for making it happen. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. You saw it right there. You saw it, didn't you? That was a Nazi salute, wasn't it? Oh my gosh. The media went crazy. The left was indignant. Oh my gosh. There's no question about it. There's no way that wasn't just an overt attempt to praise Hitler, wasn't it? Everybody was indignant. But gosh, you know what? You know who else then is also a Nazi? Spartacus. Look. Oh my gosh, do you see that? It's exactly the same. I didn't know that. Cory Booker, Mr. Spartacus, is also a Nazi, right? Because if the left was so certain that Elon's little gesture there, which is exactly what Cory Booker just did out in California, well, then I'm going to have to use their logic. Cory Booker is a Nazi. I had no idea. I guess it's he can stand to give a long speech. He didn't even bring up Hitler once during that entire 25-hour speech. Who knew? But you know what? The Dems were so certain back then that when you do that, it's an ode to Hitler, that you're a Nazi. So congratulations, Democrats. You got a Nazi of your own. But I digress. Anyway, sorry. I love that. I mean, I can't get over it. And nothing. No outrage online. No, he's got, think about all these people who are so clear that we can't unsee this. We must remember what Elon's just done. None of them saying a thing now, are they? Silence. All right. But back to reality. Once again, I don't know if it was like his turn, but Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent went on Face the Nation to humiliate Margaret Brennan. Take a look.
The reality is there will either be less inventory or things at higher prices or both.
When we were here in March, you said there was going to be big inflation. There hasn't been any inflation. Actually, the inflation numbers are the best in 4 years. So why don't we stop trying to say this could happen and wait and see what does happen?
It's embarrassing. I mean, 1 week it's Rubio. I think Lutnick's been on there. I mean, I honestly think that she should stop booking Trump cabinet secretaries. I mean, I enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. I love this because it's just so funny, like watching them come and just destroy her. It's embarrassing. And you know, I looked down on Twitter yesterday. She's trending again. Like at some point, do you not have a staff that looks out? Or maybe they like intentionally do this to her. I don't know. But week after week after week after week. And then he starts talking about tariffs and he does it again. Take a look.
Listen to earnings calls just like we do. Mm-hmm. You know what Walmart's saying, what Best Buy's saying, and what Target are saying.
But Margaret, I also know what Home Depot and Amazon are saying. I know what the South China Morning Post wrote within the past 24 hours, that 65% of the tariffs will likely be eaten by the Chinese producers.
Oops. You know, that's not the narrative that they want. That's, you know, they don't like that. I don't like talking about that, but I mean, it's just, these guys are they're not reporters. I know we talk about this. They're activists. She's acting so like holier than thou, so elitist. We know. You don't know because he schooled you on the first one. You were wrong then. So you don't know. And this happens over and over again. They don't learn their lesson. They come back week after week, story after story. The American people have gotten smart to it, and they're just not going to deal with it anymore. And I'm so happy about having a team that not just the president, but all of these guys can go out there and fight back, make a clear and concise case about what's really happening and why these numbnuts are so wrong. Anyway, Christina Bobb is about to join us. Now, you may have heard the name Christina Bobb. She used to be with OAN News. She was one of President Trump's staff attorneys. She is the person, when Mar-a-Lago was raided in August 2022, she was the person that signed for everything that was at Mar-a-Lago. And she is going to tell us today how that day went down. I don't know that the story has been told yet publicly. So sit back and relax. By the way, tomorrow, we're going to crush it again. We've got Alan Dershowitz. He's going to be joining us. On Friday, White House Deputy Chief of Staff and former campaign political director James Blair. And then coming up, Secretary Linda McMahon the week after that. I mean, just sit back, hit subscribe and notification button there because this is going to be an amazing week. Before I get to Christina Bobb, who is, as I said, a former Marine, a former OAN reporter, a lawyer, and part of the RNC election integrity effort, I want to tell you about two of our great sponsors and then bring in Christina. You guys know that I've talked about being on a wellness journey. The key to a wellness journey is good sleep. This is it. And I've suffered from a bad night's sleep for a long time until I am now excited to share with you what I did. I switched over to start using Beam's Dream Powder every single night, and it made an absolutely real difference in my life. Beam's Dream Powder is proudly founded in America and run by people who share our values, hard work, integrity, and delivering results. That's the key. You will see the results almost immediately. It's a science-backed, healthy nighttime blend. I love the flavors. All of them are good. You know, if you listened before, I talk about the cinnamon cocoa flavor, but the brownie, the peppermint, they're all amazing. But here's the thing. It's not just how it tastes. It's all the ingredients. They're all natural, all healthy. Melatonin, magnesium, L-theanine, apogene, reishi, all of that, all natural is in there. And my focus has returned. I fall asleep quick, I stay asleep, and I wake up raring to go. And I'm not the only one. 17.5 million nights sleep have been helped by being athletes, professionals, people like me and you. If you have trouble sleeping, this is going to be a game changer. And Beam is giving all of my listeners the ultimate Patriot discount of 40% off. That's a Trump deal if I haven't heard one before. 40% off. Try Dreams Beam Powder to change your life and get better sleep. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code word Spicer at checkout. Shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code word Spicer at checkout to save 40%. Support a great American company on your journey to wellness and a better night's sleep. If you're a longtime listener of the show, then you know my buddy Leo Grillo. Leo is the founder of Delta Rescue. It all started with one dog that he rescued, a Doberman he named Delta, that stood for dedication and everlasting love to animals. And that began the journey that Delta Rescue became. It is the world's largest no-kill sanctuary, not a shelter, a sanctuary. They help abused, neglected, malnutrition dogs get the help, the care, the feed, the veterinarian services that they all can be taken care of. And it doesn't matter. This is a place that they live out the rest of their lives, not a shelter where they're looking for a new home. Nope, Leo takes care of everybody. But the thing about Leo Grillo and Delta Rescue is that there's no big government grants coming their way. All of Delta Rescue is funded through the personal donations of people like me and you. I made a personal donation because I'm so impressed with what Delta Rescue does. Go to deltarescue.org and see if you can make a donation to help support the amazing work that Leo Grillo is doing there. And while you're there, click on that estate planning tab. And if you have an old 401k, an IRA, a stock that you want to get rid of, you might get some kind of tax benefit now after you consult with your financial planner to help make Delta Rescue an enduring mission that can go on for generations. Go to deltarescue.org and see what you can do. Christina, congrats on the new book. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me. It's my first time on, so I'm excited to be here.
Good. Well, I want to get into your book because it's fascinating. I don't think people fully appreciate that, the critical and key role you played at Mar-a-Lago when the FBI raided it. But before I get into that, like last cycle, you were a key member of the election integrity section at the RNC. I just want to get a level set, a status on election integrity. Are we doing better? How much more do we have to go as we head into the midterms? And what concerns you?
Well, we're doing better in the sense that we're not playing by COVID rules anymore. I think 2020 was just the perfect storm of everything that could go wrong. And we don't have those factors happening right now. So for that, we're already 100 times better than we were from 2020. And I really think that was the difference in 2024 was we weren't playing by COVID rules. We still have a ways to go. There's still voter roll issues. There's still transparency issues. But I think as long as there are elections, there's going to be people trying to cheat on both sides, or maybe we don't call it cheat. Maybe we just say, help their side a little bit. So I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where we don't have to be vigilant about it, but we're not quite where I'd like us to be yet, but we are better.
And are we, to your point about being vigilant, like I agree with you. I feel like you take your eye off the ball. And so are the right people keeping their eye on the ball?
Yes, we could help them more. Quite honestly, I think the right people are the grassroots. I mean, the way elections are supposed to be run is community efforts. You go vote in your neighbor's garage and they're counted at the precinct level and then the precinct reports them up. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to happen. And since 2020, we are seeing a resurgence of people getting involved at the precinct level. But the way that we clean up the mess, which there still is a mess, but the way we clean it up is by having local people who actually live and work in the communities where you're voting being part of that process. And we have seen a huge swell of that. So we're moving in the right direction. We've got a lot of work to do, but we are going in the right direction.
Is there a state or a precinct or somewhere that you can point to and you go, these guys do it right?
Oh, gosh. I don't want to get anyone excited because as soon as I say that, something will all go wrong. But,
well, like, for example, I have always believed and understood that Florida does elections well.
Yeah.
In terms of keeping their voter, they can count in one night. They do good with voter ID. I mean, but tell me I'm right or wrong. I look at Florida and say, you know what, these guys seem to do it right.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think they have also had a big push for more transparency in recent years, which has made it better. So yeah, I would say I think Florida's doing a great job. Unfortunately for me, I tend to look at all the places where we have problems. So I don't off the top of my head have great examples of great states, but Florida, I would say, is probably one of them.
It's funny because you brought up COVID. And I think that to me is the perfect example of like what happens when that was, they were just itching for a reason. Democrats were, to allow all of these reforms, so-called reforms that they wanted. Yeah. And it was the perfect, I mean, even Dr. Fauci, for as much as he wanted like lockdowns, never said we couldn't vote in person. And yet we allowed this to happen. And I get a kick out of it because to me, it's like as much of the crazy stuff that Fauci did, even he didn't say we needed to vote completely absentee. And yet Democrats were like, we're going to seize this as an opportunity to basically allow all of this voting, by mail or not in person or not use an ID. And people just took their eye off the ball and assumed that they had altruistic reasons. They wanted the best to empower people or to make them vote, as opposed to this was their way to skirt the system.
You're 100% right. In my first book that I wrote on this topic, the way I always liked to summarize it was Democrats cheated, but Republicans covered it up. This was 100% Republicans allowed this to happen and then didn't want to get blamed for it. So then they covered it up. Republicans have a majority of state houses, governors, attorneys general. We now have the White House, the Senate, the Supreme Court. This is a Republican problem, and Republicans are the ones that are positioned well to handle it. And so if we don't fix it or aren't seeing the results that we want, it's because of Republicans.
To that point, when you talk to people, and I mean, like, not just randos, but like when you've had these positions and you said, hey, here's an issue, here's how we can fix it. Do you find that like Republican leaders are lazy? Or are they scared to take on the system? Like what, to me, so much of it is, as President Trump says all the time on so many of his policies, common sense. And yet I go, why aren't we having these fights? Why aren't we taking them on? Because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think I can't guess what everyone's motivations are. And certainly I've talked to several different Republican leaders who probably all have different motivations for what they want to do or why they don't want to do something. But I certainly think that the flaws in the system work to the advantage of some Republicans, and they just don't want to change it.
What do you
mean? Particularly in very red districts, where they're comfortable in their seat. That really is probably one of the least corrupt, but most likely problems that I see on the Republican side is Republicans get comfortable in their position and they're afraid if they make kind of a significant change that it will somehow disrupt their seat. So they recognize that in a more even-handed district where it might be +1 or -1, that we really need reforms to ensure that there isn't ballot stuffing or harvesting. They just don't want to make the change because they don't want it to impact their seat. So, I mean, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but I do think that it is a real problem on the Republican side.
You're a lawyer. You've been involved in like legal stuff going back to your time in the Marine Corps. So I want to ask you this question because there was a chart that came out that a friend of mine, Bruce Melman, puts out these charts on a Substack newsletter that he writes on Sundays called 6 Charts. Shout out to Bruce. But one of them caught my eye that I wanted to ask you about because you were coming on. It says tracking the lawsuits against Donald Trump's executive actions. And it's insane. Agency cuts, birthright citizenship, DEI, DOJ, education, elections, funding of federal funding, immigration, public data, tariffs, transgender rights, other it's almost like whatever he does, the answer is sue him. And I can't believe how litigious. I mean, not that loss. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying that you can't sue people, but it's unbelievable how they've literally just weaponized the system for all the talk about, when Trump uses the legal system, he's horrible. When they use it against him, it's saving the Constitution. Yeah.
And it comes down to the fact that this time in his second term, we're all aware that these career bureaucrats that have burrowed into the agencies are a problem. And when they expose themselves by trying to buck the agenda, they're removed quickly without anybody even batting an eye. That didn't happen in the first term. I'm sure you remember quite well. There were a lot of kind of stonewalls within the agencies. Well, we don't have that now. And so the only way that the left really has to stop what the president is doing is through the courts, because they do still have a lot of very liberal judges throughout these districts that are willing to make these kind of ridiculous rulings that impact the entire country, despite it being one small district. So I think it just comes down to the fact that they no longer have the Department of Justice. They don't have, all of these federal agencies that during his first term, they controlled and were able to kind of minimize his influence on them. That's not happening this time around. And so the only weapon they really have to use against Donald Trump right now are the courts. And boy, are they using it.
They are. It's one of the things that as a non-lawyer, I've tried to figure out, like, for example, on the trade cases, and maybe this is too wonky, but I can't tell if they're saying, like, so there's all these different tools that the president has, right? So he used emergency action as the basis to implement the tariffs. What the court seems to have said is, hey, wrong tool. And that's what I'm wondering is like there's other, like, for non-trade dorks, there's Section 122, there's Section 232, Section 301 that allow the president to seek certain remedies.
Right.
But so is the question, and maybe again, if this is too wonky, but is the question that he does have the right, but he maybe is using the wrong tool in the toolbox, legally speaking?
Well, I think that's the argument that they're trying to make, but the problem is it's not their call. It's the president's call.
That's right.
If there are tools that are available to the president, meaning different laws, different powers that the president has, that's his call to make. It's not the court's decision. And we're seeing the courts really infringe on that right to the point where now the president basically has to go to some local district judge and say, hey, am I allowed to do this? I mean, that's crazy. It's crazy that these judges are trying to say, oh, well, let the president do this, but not that, when it's not their call. So I firmly am looking straight at Chief Justice Roberts saying, when are you going to shut this down? Because it's really impeding the ability of the Trump administration to do what the American people elected him to do. These are all things we wanted. These are all things he campaigned on and said, if you get me in office, I'm going to do these things. And he got elected resoundingly. And now he's having a hard time implementing his process because these liberal courts are saying, well, we don't want to give you authority to do that. So I think Chief Justice Roberts, I think the Supreme Court already could have, but for whatever reason, they're dragging their feet, just needs to come down with a very strong ruling that's broad enough to cover a variety of issues and just shut the whole thing down. But they haven't done it yet.
Yeah, it's interesting though. I mentioned this a second ago. The president has sued some major media outlets. ABC, they settled with them. CBS is in the middle of apparently, if you believe the reports, trying to figure out a settlement with him because they selectively edited that Kamala Harris interview. And the thing that I find fascinating, Christina, is when they sue Donald Trump, when they use lawfare to go after him, that's good. That's great. That's amazing. Right. When Donald Trump uses the same tools to right wrongs, right? Let's face it, this isn't about, I don't like an interview with Kamala Harris. It was CBS in 60 Minutes editing an interview to benefit her in a general election, to put her in better light. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of why you hire, ad consultants. They say, let's make an ad, make you look really nice, get this message out of the American people. CBS, in effect, tried to put their thumb on the scale in the election by selectively editing an interview to make her look better. And when Donald Trump uses the judicial branch, the courts, to right a wrong, then that's a constitutional crisis. That's wrong. And I find it fascinating how one way they look at it is it's a good thing, they're holding him accountable. But when he uses the same court system to seek justice for him and wrongs against him, well, that's a bad thing.
Yeah, it's a schizophrenic message. They want to be able to kick him and the rest of us whenever they want, but we're not allowed to fight back and we're not allowed to exercise our rights. I mean, the last 4 years, how many criminal cases and how many civil cases were brought against Donald Trump and his supporters? I'm still fighting a criminal case against myself. I'm a criminal defendant in Arizona right now, and nobody was crying for me saying the criminal justice system has been weaponized. But now that they're all scared that, oops, maybe we actually did something wrong, and oops, maybe we could get indicted or prosecuted. Now suddenly everyone's going, wow, we don't want to weaponize the justice system. Too late. You already did. So I don't think they're going to get any tears shed from Donald Trump on their cries over this. They're not going to get any from me. But yeah, they can cry about it.
I want to touch on your book. It's coming out in a couple of months. It's now available for pre-order. I've written 4 books. Donald Trump has been unbelievably supportive. He's endorsed every one of them. But he's never written the foreword to anything that I've done. Now, I will have to say, I didn't even know that you could ask the President of the United States. I think what stood out to me immediately, beyond the subject, and I want to get into this, I literally was looking when your book came out, and I'm like, the foreword is written by Donald Trump. And I'm like, I didn't even know you could ask for that. How did that happen?
Yeah, that's so funny. Honestly, it wasn't my intention. So I had to meet with the president because a lot of the information is attorney-client privilege, right? Because I was a staff attorney for him at the time. And so I've got emails and text messages and everything you would want to know exactly about the timeline, how everything went down. But I needed his information to publish it because technically it was his information. And so I had a meeting with him. We were in the Oval Office and it was great. It was just a really nice connection again. And he was like, great, I hope the book does really well. And it just kind of fell out of my mouth. And I was like, sir, do you want to do the foreword? And he just thought about it for half a second and said, yeah, let's do it. And I think it was just because, he wanted the information out too. And so he wanted people to know, like, hey, this is actually what happened. She's got the receipts, check it out. So it just happened. And he actually made it happen. It would have been very easy for him to be nice in the meeting and say, oh, yeah, we'll do it. And then conveniently forget. But he followed up with me and he was like, did you get it? I want to make sure you've got the forward. So he's been absolutely amazing through this process. I'm so excited that he did it. And I'm excited for the American people to read what he wrote as well as the information I've taken from him and put in here.
Christina, I don't know if you did the research on this, but this is the first, I know that he's endorsed a lot of books. Like I said, he's endorsed 4 of mine. Has he ever written a foreword?
I honestly thought about looking and I was like, I don't want to know. Because if it is the first one, like that's too much for me. I can't take it. I'm so grateful. It makes sense though, because it's his house, it's his right. It is my story. It's my role in it, but it really is his story too. And so it makes sense and works with the book, but I'm so excited and too scared to look up things like that. So I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's get into it. So you were the one, and I don't think anyone fully, I didn't know this until you and I spoke the other day. Yeah. When the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago, you were the attorney. So walk us through the TikTok. How does this go down?
Yeah, so I was there. So there was an attorney in Washington, D.C. who actually had been retained to handle the case. That was not me, and I didn't have anything to do with that. But I ended up becoming the custodian of records. So I was the one that signed for the documents that were turned over to the FBI. And that's kind of how I got sucked in, not sucked in, that sounds bad, but, rolled into the case. I was a staff attorney on site. They needed someone to sign for the documents, and that's what I did. So I saw.
Wait, just stop and back up for viewers. So I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. Because it's not like you just went, oh, okay, let me go sign my name. So give me the TikTok here. We know that there's a back and forth between the National Archives. They're saying, hey, Mr. President, you have some documents that we don't think you're entitled to. We'd like them back, right? And the president's saying to, I assume, you or the other attorneys, hey, I believe I'm legally entitled to these. Give us a sense of like the state of play first.
Yeah, so that did happen initially, and that was with the attorneys in Washington, D.C. They were going back and forth with that.
Okay.
By the time they wanted to come down to Mar-a-Lago and actually meet, we met probably 6 weeks maybe before the raid, and we had a whole discussion.
And
the
who's
president.
We?
It was me, the attorney, because I was an attorney for President Trump, but I wasn't actually the attorney handling the case. So It was me, the attorney handling the case, DOJ, and the FBI, all at Mar-a-Lago, and then the president joined that meeting as well. That was in June. The raid happened in August. And so I give the whole, like the email exchange, the text messages, the dialogue of all of that. So you get the whole behind the scenes of like how it all went down. And then it transitions to the raid, which I don't believe not only was it not necessary, I think it was improper. I think there were a lot of problems with the way that it came about. It should never have happened. It's pretty astonishing and shocking, actually, the series of events. When you look at it, you go, there's no way that this is what happened before they raided Mar-a-Lago.
Well, then give us a sense. What did happen? I mean, you tell.
Well, not a lot. I mean, they had President Trump was completely cooperative, 100% cooperative. And I think they just thought that they could just get away with it and just make it up and say, oh, no, he wasn't cooperative. No, he was. And I've got the emails and the records to show it. So I think they just assumed, especially someone who's currently facing felony charges, I don't think they thought a book would come out about it. So this is all the things they don't want you to see about it.
Okay, so walk us through that morning in August. You've got this attorney in Washington, D.C. who's the lead on the case. Does somebody call you and say, Christina, we need you to go to Mar-a-Lago and sign for something? Like, give us some insight into how that day went down.
Yeah, so I had actually signed. So I signed a few different things, which is what got me.
When?
Initially at the first meeting back in June, that was the initial batch. And then again at the raid, I was the one on site who signed for what the Department of Justice and FBI were, basically the receipt, right? The warrant, the inventory list, signed for what they took from Mar-a-Lago. So I have a few different documents throughout this that I signed for. But yeah, I was minding my own business on, I think it was August 8th, 2022. And I got a call from the attorney in Washington, D.C. saying, you got to get down to Mar-a-Lago. The FBI's there raiding the place. I was like,
where were you?
I was actually at the DMV. So
in Florida?
Palm Beach. Yep. So it was completely unexpected. And so I got down there and started interacting with the FBI agents, and eventually they had an assistant U.S. attorney show up on site. And so the FBI got there. I was made aware of it once the FBI was there. So they were there before me. But I got there probably, I want to say 10:30 maybe in the morning, and stayed until I think it ended around 6 or 7. So I was there the entire duration.
So you're at the DMV, you get a phone call. Hey, Christina, you need to get to Mar-a-Lago. And you show up, and so what happens? Do you just go, can I talk to, I mean, this is like the movies, right? Can I talk to the agent in charge? And they say, who are you? I mean, like, how does this, in real life, is it like the movies, or how does it actually go down?
Yes, actually, I've had a few people read an advanced copy of the book. The book's being printed right now, and so it comes out in a couple months, August 9th, but it's available for pre-sale now. And they're like, this is like a movie. This needs to be a movie. It was exactly like the movie. It's like what you would think of with the agents and their sunglasses. And a lot of them were wearing masks, I assume, because they figured there were cameras watching, security cameras, and they didn't want their faces identified. I assume, I don't know why. Maybe they were all just liberals. But they had masks and sunglasses, and it was hard to tell who they were. But yeah, it was, if you think of a raid in a movie, that's kind of what happened. Although they were respectful to the property, they didn't like break doors down or anything like that. There was an incident with a lock that they decided to break rather than wait for the key. But yeah, it was like a movie. So I hope to make a movie out of it because it's so wild. I want people to be able to see it.
So this, you pulled down that driveway, you walk up and say, "I'm Christina Bobb. I'm the attorney for the president." And then how does this, I mean, like I said, all I know is what I see in TV and the movies. So do they say, "Ms. Bobb, we're taking you back here to sign some documents," or do you say, "I'd like to see the warrant. I'd like to see this."
Yeah.
Like, give me some color.
I wanted
on
the
this.
warrant. I initially asked for the warrant. They gave me some pushback on that. We got into a bit of a kerfuffle because they didn't want to let me see the warrant. I was demanding access to the warrant, and we fought for a little while. And then, I mean, the whole day was just fighting over everything. They wouldn't let me watch them, so I was relegated to the Circle Drive. The Circle Drive right outside the ballroom.
Yep.
So I was stuck out there in August in Florida for 8 hours or whatever it was. Yes. Yeah. But yeah, anyway.
So do you call President Trump at any point and say, "I'm here, I'm on site, I'm watching"?
Yeah, I talked to him throughout the day, and it was mostly just me providing him updates. And then I do have some dialogue with the president in the story. And I apologize. I don't necessarily remember specifics from it, but it's all in the book. But yeah, I was in touch with the president. I was in touch with Susie Wiles. Pretty much.
What was his mood like?
I mean, I think he was pretty calm, really not happy about it, of course. Nobody wants the FBI showing up to their home, but he was pretty stoic, I would say.
I just think I'd be pissed. I'd be like, I'm a former president. You're in my house. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, I know it's Mar-a-Lago, but that's his home. And I'd be like, so I'd be a little bit, I mean, look, maybe it's just because I'm Irish and petty, but I would be pissed. I'd be like, Christina, keep an eye on everybody or whatever. Yeah. But I've seen it, like you said, in the movies, they're always so disrespectful of your property. Never mind. And again, going back to the broader point, you guys were negotiating what to give back, right?
Right. Yes.
And was there any heads up?
No. And that's the thing. And that's why I still want people to read, because I have the exact dialogue it's so bad, Sean. It is so bad what they did. And it is so far outside acceptable behavior. And even just the way that the U.S. attorney conducted herself, or the assistant U.S. attorney handled herself, it was so rude and disrespectful. It's so important that people understand exactly how it went down.
What does that mean, though? Like, I know what rude and disrespectful.
Yeah, well, she was very arrogant to me. She's very arrogant to me, forcing me to stand out when I had questions, very dismissive, very like, well, that's your problem, that type of kind of attitude. And it was shocking. It was shocking then, and it's shocking to go back through. I had to go back through the manuscript again like a week or two ago before it got sent off to the printer. And I was just like, I cannot believe that this is actually what happened, but it is.
There's one anecdote that I'm aware of where they do something in I think Mrs. Trump's bedroom or move some stuff. Were you aware of that at the time that it was happening?
Well, I knew they were in the residence. So they told me that that they were searching the storage room, the office, and the residence. So I knew they were in the residence, but I wasn't allowed to accompany them. So I don't know what
normal. Is that normal?
I don't think so. I would assume that you would want the attorney to participate. I'm quite honestly, I'm not sure. I've never done this type of federal criminal defense. But I don't think so. I felt like, why wouldn't you allow the attorney to watch the search?
I would think so. Honestly, I mean, if it's I get maybe not Joe Blow. I mean, even then,
right?
But I mean, if I were the FBI, I'd want them to be like, I want you to see this is the president. We're treating his place with respect, and it's all by the book. When they do stuff like this is when I would be like, it's even more sketchy than I thought.
Yeah, and I said that to them. I go, you look like you're doing something sketchy if you're not letting me see what you're doing. And it ended up working in my favor and in the president's favor that they were so dismissive and didn't allow me to participate.
Why?
But yeah, because they were trying to get me to say that they found certain things, whatever. And I was like, hey, you would let me watch. Like,
Oh.
and so when they were forcing me to testify and trying to get me to admit certain things, I was like, I don't know, I couldn't watch, I wasn't allowed to participate. So I've got my grand jury testimony there. I was interrogated by the FBI and the Department of Justice.
Wait, you were interrogated. Did they try to incriminate you?
Yes.
But wait, about what? That you were watching, or that you had helped facilitate the documents in the first place?
They were saying they were trying. They didn't. Thankfully, I didn't get indicted. And the reason I don't think I was indicted was because I had text messages, emails, phone records, and the video surveillance all corroborated my story. But they had a problem with their case had a lot of fundamental flaws, but a big one was that they were trying to get Donald Trump for mishandling classified documents, right? That's supposedly what happened.
Yeah.
Donald Trump never handled the documents at all. So if he didn't handle the documents, how could he have mishandled them? So they needed to also implicate staff members and make it a conspiracy to conceal documents in order to get to Donald Trump, because they couldn't even establish that he knew the records were in the storage room. That's how weak their case was. And so they were looking for staff members who they could try to make as co-conspirators in order to get Donald Trump on these charges, because he never handled the documents. He wasn't the one who picked what left the White House and that's all done by other people. And so they were trying to loop me into that, but because I had kept really close records and because of the way they conducted themselves with me, they weren't able to implicate me. So I've testified under oath, I want to say at least 3 times on these topics, and I say that in the intro. So what I put in here is pretty bulletproof. I'm confident enough to what I've testified to put the book out. That's how bulletproof I think this book is.
You're a tough person. You're a Marine. What is this whole scenario done to you personally?
It is really it's very eye-opening and jarring. Within the span of 3 years, I had 8 legal matters opened against me. I had, I think, 3 or 4 criminal investigations against me. Ultimately, I was indicted in the state of Arizona for 9 felonies, unrelated to this, for other things. I had to defend my California bar license. I had 3 or 4 different criminal subpoenas against me. I was investigated in both Jack Smith investigations, January 6th, and the Mar-a-Lago documents. So all of that attempted criminal lawfare aimed at Donald Trump, I was part of all of it. And so that's what this book does. The book focuses on Mar-a-Lago, but it goes into everything. It goes into the Jack Smith investigations and my role there and what actually happened with those investigations. And then my own indictment. I give you all of the facts and show you exactly what happened with my indictment. So what I want people to take from this book is, 1, the information, of course, about President Trump, so they know exactly what happened with Mar-a-Lago. But this weaponization of the justice system, they're coming for us. They're coming after the no-name people who people haven't heard of, in using it to scare people out of political action. And it's really scary. And I think that people don't realize that's happening because the people that they're doing it to aren't Donald Trump. They don't have the Trump platform. They don't have the Rudy Giuliani platform, even though we're seeing them all engaged in this type of lawfare. And so I want the American people to realize, hey, yeah, that's really bad what they're doing over here, but they're doing it to us too. And you need to understand this. And this is why it's so important that we need to get our government on the right track and really empower President Trump to crush this, because we're at a critical point with our justice system.
Hold it. This is a good one. Is everybody listening? Deranged Jack Smith. We're going to call it the Deranged Jack Smith signing or bill. Go ahead.
One law firm that provided pro bono legal services to the special counsel's office under Jack Smith's leadership was Covington and Burling. As a result of those actions, we're now going to be suspending and putting under review the security clearances for the attorneys and employees at that firm who worked with Jack Smith's team. And we're going to continue holding the people who were responsible for the weaponization of government and who supported it accountable for what they did.
When I said beyond that, I got to imagine, I know that I was a witness for the Mueller investigation, and what that did time-wise, financially.
Yeah.
you can't represent yourself, I assume.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could, but has this had a tremendous financial impact on you and your family?
I have been so grateful, and it is by the grace of God that donors have stepped up and people have stepped up to help me. Of the 8 legal matters, I would have to go through all the bills to get the exact number, but it's easily a couple $1 million worth of legal fees over the last 4 years. I was a reporter at the time. I'm not making millions of dollars, but it was because of donors that stepped up. And then for some of it, the stuff that related to a lot of the January 6th stuff was covered by insurance because I was a reporter at the time for the company that I worked at, One American News, that I worked for. So some of it, it's a mix, it's a mix of everything. But I think I had a dozen different attorneys, lots of legal bills, all paid for in different ways. But thankfully, I've been able to survive it.
I don't think people appreciate that. I've mentioned this a few times before. When you get that subpoena, whether you're a target or not, even if it's the House of Representatives, you have to have an attorney. There's usually another attorney, a paralegal, and people don't appreciate it. I think the point that you made just a second ago, part of the reason they do this is because when you have the full weight of the government, the DOJ, the IRS, whatever, their whole goal is just to basically say, look, we're going to come after you. Here's all the attorneys. It's going to cost you, or take behind what's door number 2, capitulate, give us the answers that we want, plead to the following, and we'll let you off. And I don't think, to your point about coming for you, people don't realize it until you're the target of it, what that means.
I thank you so much for highlighting that point, because that is exactly the purpose of this book, to try to help people understand exactly that point. And I love President Trump's immigration policy. I love that ICE is doing what they're doing. I love the trade issues that, President Trump is trying to reestablish and, fix the economy. I love the Trump administration and what they're doing on the issues. When it comes to, illegal immigrants and MS-13 and our enemies, this is what I can tell you. MS-13 has never showed up to my house to demand my cell phone, my computer, my personal notes, my emails, my text messages, my app, DMs, my online profile, and everything I've ever written in, within a specified period of time. MS-13's never done that. But the American government, in one form or another, has showed up to my house 8 times to do that. So to me, yes, we need to handle the MS-13 issues. We need to handle all of that. But an abusive American government, to me, is a greater threat. So
when you talk about that, is it the rank and file or the leadership? Meaning, now that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are leading the FBI and Pam Bondi's leading the DOJ, were the people that you're encountering just taking orders from higher up, or are they themselves part of the problem?
I think they themselves are part of the problem. And like I said, I go into a lot of that in the book, and I give you my discussions with them, and I'll let the reader make up their own mind whether they think it was appropriate or not. But I think it's a mindset. I think our federal bureaucracy kind of breeds people who, it's almost like an industry. They believe they have a right to run the industry. And I love Kash Patel. I don't know Dan Bongino, but I like him. I've seen him publicly. I love Pam Bondi. I think they're great. They're only going to be there for, 4 years or however, 1 year, 2 year, however long they decide to stay. And there's always turnover. And the thing that is the biggest threat hanging over our heads right now is a turnover to, I don't even want to call it Democrat, because honestly, it doesn't have to be Democrat, but to another regime, Biden-esque regime that wants to kind of solidify their power. They come after us harder than the last 4 years. We never get to recover. I mean, that's how extreme and how severe they came after us. Only the media hit it, and you only saw Donald Trump. And so Americans watch it and think, oh, well, it's Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani and Mark Meadows. It's not me. No, it is. It is. They're going after Gold Star mothers. I mean, Tina Peters is sitting in prison in Colorado right now. She's 69 and her, lost her son in combat, her Navy SEAL son, and they threw her in prison. I mean, they're coming after us. And
so what's the solution?
I would like to see personally, I think somebody needs to be prosecuted for it, because, and I say that very cautiously, because they go, oh, well, don't do to them what they did to us. And we're not. First of all, they're coming after us for crimes that never occurred. for those that actually did commit crimes, they need to be prosecuted. For too long, Republicans have said, oh, well, we don't want to prosecute our political opponents. So even though they're actually committing crimes, we're just going to let it go. Well, they keep coming for us. And I'm not saying we need to prosecute everybody. I actually don't think we should. I don't think it's good for our nation. I don't like that type of mentality. But you need to hang a pelt on the fence. If you don't hang a pelt on the fence, they're going to keep coming for us, and they're coming for us. So I think somebody needs to be prosecuted. Somebody high. I'm not talking about the rank and file. I'm talking about the decision makers that actually orchestrated all of this. Send a message and say, hey, look, if you keep coming for us, we actually will prosecute you. And I think as soon as they know that, they'll stop. But until that happens, they're not going to stop because they want the power. And we're giving it to them. Just like you said originally about when we were talking about elections, we're giving it to them because we're not doing anything to stop it.
Yeah. Kind of like what President Trump said after they tried to assassinate him. Fight, fight, fight.
Exactly.
That's what we need to do. Christina Bobb, I'm excited to read this book. It's the first time I think I've ever had someone on the show and not had the book. But when you were telling me about it, I was like, we need to do this. Guys, I got to ask you a favor. As a guy who's written a few books myself, getting those numbers up, the pre-orders up, go to Amazon right now. Look up Defiant, look up Christina Bobb. Either way, you'll get to the same book. You'll see the book, you see the cover, you see it on our screen. Pre-order it now. Not only will you guarantee that you'll have it in August when it comes out, but it helps Christina send a signal that there's a lot of interest in this. And the whole way that the algorithm stuff up there in the cloud or wherever works is that interest matters. So do me a favor, go on to Amazon right now, pre-order Christina's book. Let's send a signal that we want to hear the truth about what happened on that day. And Christina, I couldn't be more proud of what you've done and that you've come here to share that with us. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Sean. I appreciate you having me.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in and kicking off your week with us. We got a huge week ahead. Alan Dershowitz is here tomorrow, and boy, do we have a lot to break down with the professor. I got a brand new column out today at SeanSpicer.com. Go over there, sign up for free. A VIP membership is always great. By the way, Father's Day is coming up. You know what you could do? What are you getting for your father? A subscription to SeanSpicer.com. Yeah, it's always nice. Give that to dad or some random dude and say, hey, you can be my dad. I just gave you a subscription to SeanSpicer.com. Anyway, we'll see you back here tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show. Have a great night. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.